Hey everybody, I am Bill and welcome to episode number 4 of the Angle of a Talk podcast. My guest today is Marcusmmc. That's right, Mean Marcus, who actually is not mean at all. He could not be any sweeter of a guy. Marcus is an air traffic controller on the PilotEdge network. Great streamer, great guy. He's the first person that yelled at me on PilotEdge, so Marcus holds a special place in my heart. So without further delay, let's meet Marcusmmc.
Holy crap, who's this guy? I'm here.
Good day.
That was
Calling on
Excuse my English,
listener,
Emma.
compass pitch.
Thanks on your merry way, and if I need you, I will contact you. Torrance Tower, wind calm, make right crosswind departure, runway 29 left, cleared for takeoff. It's not that hard, but there's a hold involved. They couldn't do it. I can do anything better than you. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. I done lost my mind. Engines are on fire. I don't know what to do.
All right, Marcus, well, what did you think of your highlight reel?
The highlight reel. There's always good stuff, right?
Yeah. And thank you for playing along with my bit. I wanted to jump in there and see if you would catch that. That's done after the fact. You played it off beautifully.
I do what I can, man. We're here to entertain and please, right?
So, Marcus, welcome. Thank you for joining me on episode 4 of the Angle of a Talk podcast. You're joining us live from the air traffic control tower, I see.
Ma'am, right.
It's a beautiful.
I'm busy working.
Beautiful day out. Looks like 3,000 scattered. Visibilities, more than 10.
Winds are calm. It's a beautiful day to go flying.
Beautiful day.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marcusmmc. The first question I have is, what is the MMC part?
I know, right? So the MMC, much like my good buddy Ty, the whole name is really uninteresting. MMC comes from the school I attended, the college that I attended. It's a tiny little school up in eastern South Dakota. Tiny little town and a tiny little school. Mount Marty College was the name of the place, and it was just, I don't know. It just MMC was the initials of the college, so there it is.
I like it. I always thought it was like Mean Marcus Controller.
It kind of merged into something like that, and I wish that I could just get rid of the whole Mount Marty College aspect of it, and then all of a sudden just take it as the Mean Marcus Controller. I kind of own that a little bit more than I probably should, but.
All right. Well, I've been dying to ask that question, and I wanted to wait for now to ask you that officially.
I'm sure, just like Ty, I get that one quite a bit too.
Yeah.
Are you Merchant Marines? Did you misspell the Marine Corps with Mark USMC? It's like, what is it? No, it's something stupid and something boring, and it's just what it is.
Well, I dig it. Okay, so Marcus, for those of you that know you. You're, a staple online on the PilotEdge community. You're an air traffic controller, which we'll get into how you got there. But in your life right now, kind of give us the current state of Marcus. What you're currently doing. Your day to day.
Oh my goodness!
Just what you're up to, what you've been up to, short and medium term.
Well, again, those guys that do know me, that have followed me for, gosh, it's been years now, that, I love hockey, and hockey is a huge part of my day-to-day life now, especially this time of year. I've taken on another job as a hockey referee, so I've been certified from the USA Hockey Association. It's been great fun, and it's a great way to make money and keep yourself in shape. So I've really loved doing that. My daughter, Emma, you guys know her as the coffee concierge. She's also taken a strong liking to hockey, and I've been coaching. And so she's kind of been going through the introductory program, and I've been helping her and about 40 other kids in her class is about what it is. So there's a lot of kids. Yeah, man, it's a lot. So hockey. I'm on 2 different hockey teams. So that takes up a lot of my after PilotEdge time. I still work. Man, I work 40 hours a week. I train with PilotEdge. A lot of you guys know that I am an instructor with PilotEdge too, and I've been doing that for years. Love doing it, and right now it's a really busy time for us as well. We've got some new guys coming up in the Western U.S., and that's really been a lot of my focus when you don't hear me on the scopes. Even though you might not be hearing me, I'm hearing you, and you are being judged. No.
So you are a streamer as well. You stream your X-plane flying, and for years you streamed your work on the scope. PilotEdge recently changed some rules regarding air traffic controllers streaming. Hopefully that changes, but
I agree.
It's that's where I found you was, well, I mean, one, I had a run-in with Marcus very early on in my PilotEdge flying. But
first day, wasn't it?
Second flight.
Second flight?
Yeah, it was my second flight. Yeah,
I was the deuce.
You were the first one that really yelled at me. Like Goldsey was the first controller. I mean, like 90% of my flying on PilotEdge has been with Goldsey.
And he's lucky you.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's just like the sweetest guy, and is very I don't want to say passive aggressive, but he'll tell you when you're wrong in a very nice, smooth way.
Oh, he's a total Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
That's right. But it's kind of my favorite things with Goldsey. He was one of my students a long time ago. He's actually my student again now because I'm bringing him over onto the West, which I'm super excited about. But as we're going through training, like you said, he's like the sweetest guy ever. And there was a point where I seriously had to stop him and say, Goldsey, you really need to be a bigger dick. and he's like, I can't do it, Mark. It's like, no, seriously, when you're telling people that they're doing something wrong, they're not getting it because you're just being too damn nice. So sometimes, man, you just got to be a bigger dick. So when we get going, or when a pilot really has a good mishap, he goes, "Hey, Marcus, was I a big enough dick?" So yeah, he'll appreciate that, I'm sure. Hey, Goldsey.
Hi, Goldsey. We love you. Yeah. So after I met you, through the radios coming into Van Nuys all those flights ago, I found out that you streamed, and that's where I learned so much of what I know now that I've brought into the real world flying. Because, from my perspective, being a student pilot, there's the trial by air, kind of aspect to PilotEdge that I really enjoy. But then there's the side of it that your stream provided, which was the commentary behind some of the things that you would say, which, going through the early parts of my training, to be able to, even if they're kind of jokes, like the whole "with you" thing,
right? It's unnecessary, though, right?
It is unnecessary, but like the commentary that you provided, has been invaluable on those streams, and obviously the camaraderie and just the community aspect of it, I loved.
Sure.
But hugely educational. So I mean,
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super fun to watch those.
Yeah, it was. It was really probably one of the coolest things that I was able to do with PilotEdge, and I hope that management does see it, that there was more education involved in those streams, and I hope that again sometime at some point they will be brought back. But there was a considerable amount of education happening, and if you watched them too, I think you notice. I don't claim to, know and understand everything. And when we didn't, I mean, you hear the Batman call signal, and there we go. We're off to the aim, man. We're gonna go and we're gonna find references. And if I needed to go and look into the .65, the FAA document for air traffic controllers, away we'd go. And I'd have it up in the middle of my stream, and most times I'd forget to take it off, because that's what we do as streamers. If we're looking at a chart or something, I mean, we just forget.
Yeah.
And so that was one of I think the coolest things that I've been able to do. I mean, really within the PilotEdge system was bring that stream and use it as an educational platform, but still have a blast doing it, because man, we had a blast. We really did. I had a blast. I hope a lot of people came and watched daily. So I mean, I'm assuming a lot of us guys
part of my
really
daily
enjoyed
routine.
it. So, yeah, sure. I know. And I got to say too, for all those guys, when the news came down that the streams were going to be shut down, man, I was overwhelmed with messages for it had to have been at least 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it really had to have been 4 weeks. Hey man, what's going on? I miss your streams. I don't know. And I did my best to answer everybody. But it's been great. I mean, it meant a lot to me. And again, I hope someday soon that I'll be able to, if I can't get the scope streamed again, I've got to get flying more. That's the thing right now. I'm working a ton, so it's hard for me, but we'll get there, I'm sure. Yeah,
ultimately, I mean, we just love watching you and interacting with you, whether it's scope or flying. So either way, it's good, and we completely understand where PilotEdge is coming from with that rule. And if there's a way to maneuver around and sometime in the near future get it going again, that would be sweet.
I have a feeling that sometime soon, hopefully soon, I have a feeling that eventually it will be opened up again. And maybe people don't understand what happened. The reason that controller streaming has been shut down for the time being is that management determined that it was just too much of a responsibility put onto streamers to entertain while still provide a service. And I mean, whether it be providing too much information that when you get to talking, sometimes you just, especially me, as you say, I just ramble and I ramble and I ramble.
Yeah.
And sometimes things come out that shouldn't come out. And to be the face and the voice of the company while still providing a service and still entertaining and trying to balance that, it was simply from management's perspective too much to throw onto our shoulders, those of us who streamed anyway. So they just determined it was just best to turn it down.
Which makes total sense. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a pretty expensive service. I mean, it's not cheap. So if there's something, even if there's a potential for the business to be impacted, I totally get it. And hopefully it works. I mean, hopefully something works out where we're able to get the best of both worlds. But I definitely see where they're coming from.
Yeah, so understanding the fact that it is a business, and our clients are paying a pretty hefty chunk of change on a monthly basis to come back and use not my service as a streamer, but I mean the PilotEdge system anyway. We have to be careful, and it's hard. It truly is. I mean, it's something that as you're working and you're entertaining and you're talking and you're joking, it's something that's hard to censor yourself at times. I mean, it's just part of being a person. But at the same time, in my opinion, I think that the value of the not the entertainment, but the education that we had talked about, I think it really outweighs some of that. And again, that's my opinion, and it's not really my opinion that matters at this point when it comes to streaming. But talks are in place, and I hope that eventually, sometime, the service will be able to resume, and we'll be able to go ahead and have some fun again.
Cool. Okay, so I mean, for those of you, like we said, for those of you that know what Marcus is all about, and know about PilotEdge and that whole system. For those of you that may not know who Marcus is, take us back as far back as relevant, and where you got into aviation, what sent you down the path to being a air traffic controller online for flight simulators?
Oh, it was a series of bad choices. So, my best buddy has been my best buddy since I was probably a freshman in high school. His name is Joe. Um, he's a pilot now. He's a commercial pilot. He flies for mainline airline. When he was going through his flight instruction back in the early '90s, he would talk about it, and it was always something that I was really intrigued by. But like Ty said, I mean, I came from a big family, man. We didn't have a lot of just disposable income. So taking flight lessons wasn't really an option. I took a discovery flight, I think, at 14 or 15. And I was like, dude, that is so awesome. To be able to have the controls in your hands and being able to manipulate the plane. I loved every second of it. And yeah, I would have loved to have been able to do it, but it was just never in the cards. So through high school, being with my buddy Joe, he was the best dude in the world to be around. He would call me up like in the summer, and he would say, "Yo, what are you doing today?" And if I was doing nothing, he goes, "Meet me down at the Aero Club. We're gonna go fly." It's like, sweet. I mean, the moment he was of age, he had his private license. I mean, it was it was all just bam, bam, bam for him, which was fantastic. And so, I mean, we flew, and we started. The first planes that we flew was a Piper Warrior, just a tiny little thing. How many horses does those things have? What was it? 120,
Probably
140?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
140.
right.
Yeah.
So it was just he and I. We're a couple teenagers. We're just hopping into a plane, and we'll fly off to, man, we went to St. Joseph's, Missouri a ton. There's reasons for that. He and I will know, and the rest of the world will not. But St. Joseph's, Missouri, we'd go down to Kansas City Wheeler, the downtown airport. We'd fly out to the middle of Nebraska, all the way out to like North Platte. We'd fly up into South Dakota, northwestern Iowa. I mean, we just get in a plane and we just go, because basically all he was doing, he knew what he wanted to do from that time. That as a freshman in high school, he knew what he was going to be. So he's just building hours. I mean, that's it. But I mean, back then, we were renting a plane. It's like $42 an hour. I mean, it was just cheap. In comparison to today, anyway, it's just super cheap. So, we've started with, like I said, with the Warrior. We flew an Aero, we flew a Bonanza, and the Beach Baron. I mean, we were flying twins before we even went to college, man.
Really?
So, but that's what he would do. He would just call me up and say, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing." It's like, "Cool, we're going flying." And so that's what we do. We just get in a plane and we just go somewhere. And that's kind of really, I mean, at that point, I really got in my blood at that point, is I started learning about planes and what made planes work. And he really showed me the ropes. So really, really awesome. But from there, man, again, here comes a series of the bad choices. So I went to this Mountain Marty College in South Dakota, and I can't say that was a bad choice, because I did get to meet my wife there, and that was a good thing. You guys know her as the red-headed demon. If you watch my stream, she's really not. She's lovely. She's beautiful. And those guys that if you met her in Las Vegas, you'd probably agree. She's magnificent. But she's a character, just kind of like we're all characters, right? So I met my wife there. They didn't have really aviation in this town. I mean, there was a tiny little runway, or a tiny airport. There wasn't a flight school anywhere near. I think the closest flight school was probably 90 miles away. So I mean, it wasn't really open there. And summers again, I'd go home, and my buddy would call me, "What are you doing?" We'd go fly. So I mean, I'd still be able to fly. I just chose the wrong school to go to be a pilot, if that's what I wanted to be. And I would have loved to, but like I said, it just wasn't in the cards. Now, to get into air traffic control is kind of an interesting story. As my wife and I, we moved to Colorado, and we had our children. I've got twin girls, and we had our girls in '08. I found myself out of a job with newborns, and it really kind of worked out best that I stayed at home just because my wife was going back to work after her maternity leave, and I was out of a job, so it was just kind of a strange scenario. So I stumbled upon VATSIM because I fly on simulators. As that's just kind of the way I kept the aviation bug going. I flew on the simulator.
Cool. How long did you fly in a simulator?
Oh my gosh, man! I flew simulators from I was probably 1985, 1986 that I got my first flight simulator.
Sweet.
So Microsoft, what was that, 5? I don't know. It was Microsoft 3. Flight Simulator 3, I think, was the very first simulator I touched.
Okay.
5.1 was pretty meaningful to me. That was kind of that era was I was flying with my buddy at like 5.1, and I bought every version from 5.1 all the way up to when they stopped making them with FSX. Yeah. I did buy a couple versions of P3D, but it's not for me. I'm a full X-plane convert now, which is good for me. but yeah, so with the kids being born, I found myself with a lot of extra time. I found VATSIM. I didn't really get into the flying part of VATSIM. It drove me nuts. I mean, even from the beginning, it just drove me nuts. Because when I was available, there just was never a controller online in the U.S. So I got involved with the Denver ARTCC and got enrolled in their training program. And my instructor there was a great dude named Dick Snare, and he was probably
like solid name.
Seriously, and he was like, I'm not kidding. He probably had to have been 85 years old. He was retired. I guess you could call myself retired, but I wasn't. I mean, I was just out of a job. So we would just sit, and he took me through the training program. Dick Snare and me, and I went through the training program like that, just because I had time.
And what is ARTC?
ARTCC, the Air Route Traffic Control Center. So it's basically it's the designation for a center. So when you talk to like Los Angeles Center, it's the Los Angeles ARTCC, or ARTIC is sometimes what they're referred to as well. Okay.
And it's their official, like the FAA training program?
No, it's just VATSIM, the virtual one with VATSIM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, VATSIM.
Okay, so yeah, Dick Snare was a controller on VATSIM.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Dick Snare was a controller on VATSIM. I don't know what he did in the real world, and unfortunately, by the time I thought, man, I should go really get to know Dick more rather than just what he knows with ATC. He had already passed away. But yeah, he was a great instructor, and it was like perfect timing for me to learn the ATC system because he had time to give and I had time to take.
Yeah.
And so I studied, man. I can't tell you how much I studied. When my kids were napping, I was studying. Because I never had formal training in aviation. So I never took the flight. So I didn't have practice with phraseology, but I also understand that flight students, especially now, I understand that flight students don't get that training either. But I'd never gone through phraseology training, procedural training, but it's always something that had intrigued me. The area in which I flew with my buddy Joe, it's the Class Charlie airspace, and actually there's 3 of them really close to here with Offutt Air Force Base, Omaha, and Lincoln, which is not very far. There's 3 Class Charlies that are pretty damn close to each other. So I mean, we were in communication with ATC, but I never took charge of the comms. I easily could now, I would imagine that. Yeah. But really, that's kind of how I got into ATC was with the VATSIM system and Dick Snare. And I met some great guys in the VATSIM world, and I'm super happy that I've been able to keep in touch with a lot of them and have even brought several of them over to the PilotEdge side, and it's been fantastic.
So did you learn a VATSIM just as a flight simmer and just kind of, like, I mean, do you remember when you were first aware that there was a plugin where you could add air traffic controllers to the sim?
Do I remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I was stoked. Yeah, I mean, I remember I had one of my babies on my lap, and I remember just kind of browsing through the internet. I don't remember what exactly I was looking for. I think I was looking for just like an air traffic control plugin, because I remember that the FSX ATC flying in the town that I lived in, Colorado, Collins, they vectored me into a mountain on an instrument approach. And, that WTF moment, it's like, seriously, this is stupid. So then I think that's probably what led me to VATSIM, because I think I was looking for one of those air traffic control programs where it boosts ATC performance. I don't know. They have them out there still, I believe, but obviously I don't have much of a use for them. But I think that's how I stumbled upon the whole VATSIM world.
So
I remember
it was like the built-in, like the text ATC as part of FSX that you were using that vectored you to the mountain?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that truly was, the extent of my air traffic control knowledge at that point. All the way up until about 2008. Isn't that terrible? You go and you listen to how bad it is, and ugh.
Oh, so it was actually like a computerized voice that was reading instructions. Okay, so it wasn't like it wasn't like the X-Plane where it's text only.
No, that actually had it had like a voice to text type of thing, because it would still type out the instruction up on the top, and then when you would reply, you'd press like 1, 2, 3, or 4, and whatever you wanted to say to the ATC. Yeah, like so bad,
dude. It's like Fallout or something.
Yeah.
Do like a side mission. You got like a discussion tree.
Terrible. It's terrible. But I do remember one of my first experiences on VATSIM that it blew me away. Was Denver was doing an event, and they had, I think, like 6 or 7 controllers online at once, and I hopped on to fly, and I was just blowing away that I was actually talking to people. And it was, it truly was, at that moment, that was the very first time I had logged onto VATSIM, and I got super lucky. I contacted the training department at that moment and said, "Yep, let's go." And then, the next day you hop on, and then there's nobody, and then Denver is quiet for an entire week and a half, and then that's like I said, it just completely frustrated the hell out of me, and so I stopped flying. I think I flew on VATSIM. It wasn't very much, but I controlled on there a ton. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so after that first experience flying, you contacted them because you were like, I want to be one of these guys on the radio.
It intrigued me. Yeah, it definitely intrigued me, the whole ATC thing, because I knew nothing of it.
Was it intriguing to you looking back with your time flying with Joe? Like, do you recall kind of being interested in that side of it at the time, or not really?
Well, yeah, because there's one story that I remember that I thought, man, air traffic controllers are freaking awesome. And that was we were flying out of Offutt Air Force Base, and Offutt has stationed KC-135s. They're basically Boeing 707s, and they just fly the pattern. That's all they do. They just fly the pattern all day, every day. They hammer the pattern. So we were going to fly the pattern too, and we're going to get mixed into it. I'm watching these enormous Boeing 707s, and then I'm looking at us over at the fuel box, and we're this tiny little Piper Warrior. Like, dude, those guys are doing like 250 miles an hour. We're going to be doing, what, 100? How's that going to work? And then so it's like that puzzle, that intrigued the hell out of me. How the hell do you fit this tiny little plane into a pattern with these huge planes? And they do it every single day. It's awesome. And that's something that has always intrigued me, but I just never took the time to learn how and why.
Okay, got it. So when you found VATSIM, you had the intrigue before, and VATSIM
it definitely kind of reignited that. Yeah,
you're kind of like, here's an outlet where I can actually learn more and live out that interest.
Yeah. So
how long were you controlling on VATSIM before you found PilotEdge?
So let's see. I was with VATSIM, I think, for 3 years, and then I listened to a radio show recommended to me by my buddy Joe. Again, Joe is still a common feature here. My buddy Joe contacted me and he says, dude, there's this radio show that happens out of this airport in Chicago. These guys are hilarious. You got to listen to them. And I'm like, okay. So I was sitting in my home, and this radio show was hilarious. It was really funny. And I wish I could remember the name of the show because it was great. I wonder if those guys are still doing it. But anyway, it just so happened that the guest that night was nobody other than Keith Smith, founder of PilotEdge. And so I'm listening to this guy talk, and I'm like, man, air traffic control online? You mean I could do it as a job? What? So I sent the show an email, and I said, I need to talk to Keith Smith. And what do you know? Keith Smith sent me an email back. He goes, hey, I've heard about you, and we'd love to have you for an interview. Sweet. Dude, so through my work on PilotEdge, Keith had the opportunity to somehow at least hear my name, and yeah, interviewed and was hired right away.
Dude, that is hilarious.
So crazy sequence though, right?
That is super crazy. Before moving fully onto PilotEdge, VATSIM, so were you only controlling one area? Like, were you just in Denver?
I only controlled in Denver. I was asked to come over to Salt Lake City for a while because they were really hurting, and I went and I learned the Salt Lake City airspace, but it didn't intrigue me at that point. I knew Denver. I could control Denver with my eyes closed, But I would do the way, I don't know how VATSIM worked. It was kind of a top-down service, kind of how PilotEdge does now, except it's just one frequency, basically. So I didn't have to memorize frequencies. It was all more really about procedures and then holding your breath to make sure that the pilot would be able to keep up with that procedure.
So you were doing, okay, so like PilotEdge, you were doing tower, ground, clearance, center, all that stuff.
Basically, yeah. So basically, it was a center. The position I would normally work would be a center position, and you control everything down. So even if you're on the ground at Denver, and you wanted to taxi or even get your clearance, you'd hear, "Hey, Denver Center, and like my clearance to blah 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 blah." So they're, instead of even calling you clearance delivery using the right frequencies, they're just calling the center controller.
Oh, okay, silly. Got it. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit different. Okay, yeah. So Keith, you and Keith connect from a radio show.
An online radio show.
Which is so crazy. You get hired pretty much on the spot.
Yeah, it was very, very shortly after.
And what was next? Like, what was the first step, the switch over? Like, where do you go from VATSIM, like a simplified VATSIM to PilotEdge? So
PilotEdge training is like nothing you would ever experience ever. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know. Let me just say the success rate of students coming through the PilotEdge training system is not great. It is not an easy system. But you got to understand, we're learning how to manipulate airspace for how many different fields? 41 airports in just ZLA alone. Yeah. Throw the Western U.S. into that. There is an enormous amount of information that we're asking. At that time, they were asking me to digest super fast. And I remember my first instructor. Well, my first instructor I had for a day, and then he actually got picked up by the FAA, so that didn't last very long. So my second instructor, a great guy, a lot of you guys know him as well, Kevin Myers. He took me in, and dude, if it weren't for Kevin, I truly don't think that I would have even passed that PilotEdge, the PilotEdge training system. It is that challenging. There's no doubt about it. But Kevin was an awesome instructor. He kept on me. He rode me hard. He really did. He made sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. We spent a lot of time. Training for me lasted probably about 4 months, maybe 4 months worth of training before I was completely certified. Right?
Wow. Yeah,
it's intense. And it is. You're not just working an hour here and there. We were going, 3 or 4 hours a day, almost 4 or 5 days a week. And so, I mean, it's an incredible amount of time, but at the same time, it's just an obscene amount of airspace that was kind of put in front of me, and you look at John Wayne very well. I mean, you're comfortable with John Wayne. If I threw the standard operating procedures in front of you, you'd probably be able to pick that up super easy. Now, for a guy like me, the only thing that I knew about Los Angeles airspace was the fact that when somebody was flying the Rockies departure procedure, they were landing on the river arrival. That was it, man. From the VATSIM world, that was my experience of ZLA. I knew nothing else, man. And so to take in the 3 class Bravos with Los Angeles, San Diego, and Las Vegas, those procedures, throw in then John Wayne in Ontario and Burbank, there's a ton of information, and so that's why that's why the success rate of getting through the training program is not so great. I mean, it's a challenging system.
Oh yeah, I mean the number of airports and airspaces that you guys control perfectly, is just insane.
It's fun. It's challenging. It's fun.
Yeah. So what was it like for people that don't know, I mean, it's your job. You get paid to be a controller on PilotEdge. What was that like to go from VATSIM, where you're not getting paid, it's just a volunteer thing, to getting paid doing this?
What was it like? Oh man, for me it was extremely important because, again, as being an unemployed stay-at-home dad at that point, I mean, having that extra income was freaking awesome. I mean, especially, I can only imagine what my wife was thinking at this point, because you spend all those hours and hours and hours, and you're just wasting time to now you're putting in hours and hours and hours and at least getting compensated a bit for that time. No, it was extremely valuable, and I think the extra benefits on top of that were, I mean, they couldn't have come at a better time, because it allowed me to continue to be a stay-at-home dad for my kids and still work out of the house when they were napping, or as soon as my wife came home, I'm on and I'm working, and so it was huge. I mean, it couldn't have come at a more important and better time, and then to be able to be a stay-at-home dad for my kids and work when they were napping, or as soon as my wife came home from work, I could hop on and I'm working right there. Yeah, I couldn't have found a better setup at that time, and it's just kind of grown into something even better now, being an instructor. But I think most importantly, still, I truly believe that what I'm doing with PilotEdge makes the National Airspace System a much safer place for everybody. I truly do believe that.
I agree. I completely agree with that. So for people that are unfamiliar with this concept of, air traffic control on a sim, you're a paid controller, how do you explain that to somebody? Because I hear that question asked a lot in various streams. People, I mean, it's just an overall confusion of like, how is this possible? How does this work? So both from like how does it exist, and then like how do the financials exist? Like, how would you explain just kind of that whole system?
I wish that I could explain it perfectly clearly, because I still have a hard time, I think, describing how it exists. And I think for people who aren't familiar with the simulator industry as it sits now, it's hard for them to grasp the simulator as something other than a game. And I think that's where PilotEdge kind of separates itself from other services, and why I'm compensated for my time. We don't treat it necessarily as a game for the most part. I mean, obviously there are still some out there that do, and that's fine. I mean, you're allowed to use your sim as you see fit, as long as it's not disruptive, and you adhere to the guidelines that are put forth. But if you can see it as a tool to kind of grasp an overall picture of airspace and services And procedures, I think once you can kind of hurdle that obstacle, it makes a lot more sense. Um, why am I compensated for it? Well, again, because I think the service that we provide is worth something. I truly believe that. Now, I don't pay to use the service, but I would like to believe that I would. It truly is extremely valuable, and I think that you've seen that in your real world training as well. I mean, how much time it saved you from, having to go into a real cockpit and make mistakes. And that's what we're here. I mean, we're providing you a platform and a space to come and make mistakes.
Yeah, I have never told a tower after I was cleared to land that I was turning left base in real life.
See, we can laugh at you about that. And all it does is cost you just immediately like $20 a month.
Yeah. What I've found is flight simulator is a huge industry. And
it really is.
Huge is relative. I should kind of dial that back a little bit. It's amazing how much people spend on it. I don't know like how big the industry as a whole is, because if you're not online, if you're not streaming, if you're not, putting stuff out there, there's no way for people to know how many are really partaking in the flight sim stuff. But people spend a ton of money.
They do. I mean, software, hardware.
Yeah. I mean, some of these airplanes are like hundreds of dollars.
Seriously.
So $20 a month to, if you're spending $100 on an airplane to make it as realistic as possible, why not spend $20 a month to have the real world style air traffic control?
And learn something while you're at it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
and learn something. I mean, I think that is like the ultimate benefit of PilotEdge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're there for.
Yeah. But I think that the role-playing aspect of it is equally as important and big for the community, because I think that's where most of the base is coming from, at least from the flight sim. Like the average flight sim user is not a real-world pilot.
Yeah, I would assume that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that did that survey recently. It was a very.
Was it Navigraph? I
think it was Navigraph. Yeah, you're right.
They at least had something to do with it.
Yeah.
I participated in it, but
yeah, I did. Yeah, I did too. So given that, that you've got very difficult airspace, you got tons of airports that you're trying to replicate the procedures for the purpose of being educational to help keep the our real world airways safer.
Yeah.
How do you approach the role playing aspect of this?
Oh, how do I approach the role playing aspect? Well,
because it's one guy, right? Just for people that aren't familiar with how PilotEdge works, if Marcus is on ZLA, you're working LA Center, all the SoCal approach and departures, all the towers, all the grounds. It's one voice.
Right. So I think we're up to, is it 9 LA Center frequencies now, probably 12.5 SoCal frequencies, a couple other approach facilities here and there. To me, I don't know, like it's kind of been natural for me to be able to I guess move from one facility to another without much stress. I don't think it hasn't really been, that hasn't been a significant challenge to me. Now, of course, when we stream, you probably see it on key streams, but on my streams, I didn't really show it, but we have like a little communication box down at the bottom, and every time somebody would tune a frequency, we would get an identifier that would say, hey, this call sign tuned to this particular frequency. So, I always knew who was talking to what controller, and it's not hard to remove yourself, in my opinion. If you see the airspace that the target is in, they should be talking to that. And as long as I did my job right, they're on the right frequency. So, for me to flip past that, I guess that wasn't too difficult.
But when you're in it, because I've experienced it a number of times. Almost every time I fly, some little piece where you can kind of get lost in the line is blurred between real and fake, and
Yeah.
it feels like I'm flying, and since I do fly in this airspace, it might be a little bit easier for me to kind of put myself in that position where, hey, I'm approaching over the dam at 3,500.
Sure.
What's the weather like? And I get the feeling that you guys as PilotEdge controllers are aware that there is a role-playing aspect to this, and I got to pretend like I am the tower. Like I can see you. I'm sitting up here in the tower, watching you land. I got the binoculars.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that as a trainer, do you train prospective controllers in that aspect of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because there's and it kind of, think about the scenario too. San Luis Obispo on the network has become extremely busy. We have a series of training program ratings, if you will, scenarios that begin or end at San Luis Obispo Airport. They don't have radar.
Right,
what's that?
For the pilots, right?
For the pilots, right? Yeah. So we train at San Luis Obispo. We spend as a student, you'll spend some significant time there now, just because there's a lot going on there. But it's basic. You're learning. What we teach is you're learning, what frequency is the person talking to you on. So you make sure that you're identifying yourself as the right position, and not only are you identifying yourself as the right position, but you're giving instructions that are pertinent to that position, because if you're a ground controller, you don't want to be telling somebody that they're cleared to land or whatever. So you have to make sure that you have the right hat on, and we certainly do train for that. But at the same time, they don't have radar, so we don't necessarily have the ability, if Santa Barbara Approach is handing off a target to San Luis Obispo, we don't necessarily know what type of aircraft they are, what direction they're coming from even. So we do say, hey, we have to, even though we can see you as a little blip on our screen, you have to do a little bit of pretending. If somebody says that they're approaching from the west, but they're coming in from Oceano, which is southeast, you give that instruction as they're coming in from the west. So, listening and basically having that conversation is something that not everybody can do. If you got the script in front of you, may be fine, but to be able to listen to what somebody is telling you and to provide an instruction exactly that follows up with what they just told you, fantastic. And yeah, we do spend a pretty significant chunk of time working on that, because that is challenging. And to be able to hear multiple people talk to you at the same time, that's another one that you learn how to do that pretty dang quickly, because when it's busy, whoo, buddy.
Well, coming from the customer side, I appreciate immensely the focus on that, because it really does. It's helped me tremendously to learn, the nuances potentially of these different airports, but it adds to the realism. If like you said, San Luis Obispo doesn't have radar, you treat it as if it doesn't have radar.
We absolutely do. But taking it into the pilot's perspective, for you to be able to have that experience where, especially when it's busy, and John Wayne is busy, if it's busy on the PilotEdge network, the same principles still apply. Make your calls efficient and effective so we can move on to the next person. And that same idea still moves into the real world perfectly every single time. Yeah. There doesn't need to be a whole lot of wasted airtime. Say what you need to say, receive your instruction, and let's move on.
With you.
I still love that, man.
It's the best.
Oh my gosh.
It's the best. Julia does that all the time. It's pretty funny.
I love it.
All right, so how do you like goofy guys like me that do fly in the airspace, I know there's a handful of pilots that are local. Yeah. How do you guys take in subtle, nuanced information about airports that might be passed on from a real world, pilot that has experience in the real world? Like, hey, this isn't done quite like that, or how do you take that in? Is there like a oversaturation point where you're like, great, that's great in the real world, but we do it this way for whatever reason, or do you kind of update what you do?
As a company, there are certain things that we, will take and we actually have melded into our standard operating procedures. But like you said, there's some small airports that just do things funky. and it might not be a published procedure. It might not be a standard operating procedure, but it's something that they just have as a local procedure. And some guys can adjust a little bit better. I try to, if somebody tells me, hey, I fly out of Gillespie, and this is how they do it at Gillespie. Well, first off, I'm going to go and research it. I'm going to go, whether it be getting in touch with fly down in that area and say, hey, is that right? Or
yeah, hang on. Yes, start over with the Gillespie.
Yeah. So if somebody says that they have, a special procedure at Gillespie, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go do some research, whether it be calling somebody that I know that flies down in the area and say, hey, is this what they're doing, or tell me how they handle a certain scenario, and I'll digest it and incorporate it into what I do, or I'll even head to Google. I mean, sometimes you'll be able to find some Reddit somewhere about a particular procedure, but again, not everything that's on the internet's real. I mean, it's true. It happens.
Nonsense.
But yeah, some guys are better at it than others. I will say that. Some guys are able to take some of that local knowledge and incorporate it into their controlling. At the same time, some of those smaller deltas, as a controller, we're not required to really use it as a company SOP. Okay. As long as we're following the guidelines put forth by the bosses, then I mean we're okay. And we do have those standards that every single controller does adhere to.
Cool. Yeah, so it's kind of just like as practical, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So what would you say? I mean, there's a lot of people, and me included early on, that were very hesitant to start this because it can be intimidating. From I mean, in the real world, it's intimidating to press that button for the first time, and on PilotEdge, it's intimidating to press that button and get a clearance or get a taxi instruction. So what would your like top 5, or what's your for potential customers, what would you say? What would be your advice?
Now, okay, so first things first, just like in the real world, we're people, just like the real world air traffic controllers are people. We're just people. We're going to talk to you as you're a person. We try not to be mean, but at the same time, I take my job very seriously. So, Bill says that I yelled at him. Real world controllers are going to yell at people all the time too. Now, there's reasons that we got to do it sometimes. If you're not doing something right and we need you to do something right, we're going to let you know, hey, you're not doing that right. Do it right next time.
Yeah.
And I guess the benefit of doing it on PilotEdge is that there's going to be a next time.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
As long as I didn't hurt your feelings that badly, then you come back and you do it again. But I think that's really the most important thing. Understanding that, what? We're people just like you're people, and we know that you're coming to make mistakes. And I think that the majority of the controllers understand that. Now, that being said, understand as well that as controllers, we are stressed. And it's stressed because of the fact that we see people mess up, I mean, all day long, right?
Mm.
And it can be hard to differentiate you that just logged on to fly just a couple minutes ago from the person who's been screwing up for the past 2 hours. And sometimes, that frustration, unfortunately, just the shit rolls downhill, if you will. And that's hard. That is hard. And when that happens, I think you got to feel comfortable with saying, you know what, that was kind of unnecessary. And I've been told, I can't tell you how many times I've been told, hey, I think you're wrong, or you're being too harsh. And you know what? Yeah, I got to take a step back and say, holy crap, I've been telling people no, and you're wrong all day long. And hey, these guys are just coming here to learn. So that it's hard, we know it, but just to understand, we're people. We know that you're people and you're coming to make a mistake. Beyond that, man,
Like, where would you start? Where would you say somebody that's brand new start?
You know, I think I've got to reference my good buddy John Fly, and I know that he's your first guest, right?
Yeah, episode 1.
So I don't know that he told the story where he got started, because I think he's a great example. You know, he made a post on our forums. Now, of course, now we've moved pretty much over to Discord, and it's all instant. But he wanted to fly in Salt Lake City before the Western U.S. was open. And he was asking all kind of questions about Salt Lake City's airspace and what can I do and what can't I do. So I'm like, dude, you're in Salt Lake City. Who cares? Go fly. Just go fly. It doesn't matter. Just go fly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, dude, there's another guy from Salt Lake City. I was living in Salt Lake City at the time. There's another guy from Salt Lake City here. So I sent him a message. I'm like, hey man, another guy from the Salt Lake Valley here. If there's anything that I can do to help you or answer any questions for you, I'd be happy to do so. Here's my email address. And he's like, I would love to meet you, go grab a beer and some food. And I'm not kidding. That dude came to this bar. Yeah, we found a bar in Salt Lake City. That's harder than you think.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So we found a bar in Salt Lake City, and he brought a notebook full of questions, man. And we probably sat there for about 2.5 hours, had a couple beers and some food, and he was just asking questions about PilotEdge, about aviation, and about, anything you could think of. We never ever met before, but we became good buddies that night. So we talk regularly now. But having the courage to, just simply ask questions. Where do you start? If you're a simulator enthusiast and you want to go to the next level, man, ask people who are involved in PilotEdge now and say, hey, this is what I know. This is what I can do. Is PilotEdge for me? And go have fun.
Yeah. Is there a resource that you would, like, if you could pick one location on the internet to send a potential first-time PilotEdge flyer, what would it be?
As go there before you fly.
Yeah. Like just as a resource. Yeah.
I would say that the pilot workshops, which are available on the PilotEdge homepage under pilot resources, up on the top link.
Okay.
Bill, you could probably find the website.
Yeah, we could put the link in the description.
There you go. So yeah, there's a series of pilot workshops, and it's been a while since I went and looked at them, but they used to be ordered backwards. So you actually want to scroll all the way down to the bottom and watch the first probably 7 or 8 videos. The first thing you don't want to do is hop into a 747 at Los Angeles and file the loop departure procedure, because it doesn't exist anymore. And that only frustrates the hell out of us, I'll tell you that. So, hop in something that gives you time to understand what the hell you're doing. Whether it be a Cherokee or a Cessna, whatever, just something that is manageable.
Yeah. And
you're not just grease lightning through the airspace. Give yourself an opportunity to stay in front of your plane, and again, it's just learn. Just learn. And I think those workshops are a great place to at least start and see what's kind of expected of you.
Cool.
So Perfect. Yeah, the workshops for sure.
Good tip. What's one thing that if you're working the scope that you get really excited for? Is there anything that you kind of see coming, whether it's like a guy in a certain type of plane or a certain procedure or something where you like okay, here we go?
Yeah. So what I really love is multiple approaches into a field from all over the place, because unfortunately, just the nature of the simulator, and again, a lot of people still see it as a video game. We want to go and fly with our buddies, and so when that happens, everybody gets into a line. We call it the conga line, and it's the same procedure. So as an ATC person, it's just making sure you have appropriate separation between the planes, and it's boring, it might be fun for the guys flying the planes because, hey, 5 miles in front of me, I can see my buddy.
Yeah.
For us, it's like, So kind of what I kind of started to do, and what I look forward to doing as I don't have as many students. The group flights that I've kind of been organizing. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that I love, man.
Coming in from different directions.
Coming in, yeah. So basically, what I've kind of been doing is I've been setting up fly-ins on the PilotEdge network, where I just pick a plane and I say, let's land, within a 15-minute window. And so we've had, I think, up to 26 guys going into a tiny little field from every single direction. Now, the cool thing with air traffic control is it's all just a big puzzle. Whether you can visualize it or not, it's really all it is. It's a moving 3D puzzle. So was that 4D then? It's a giant puzzle. And you're trying to get everybody from wherever they may be into here without touching each other. And it's that being able to take all of that, put it into one lane, and land, that's, to me, that is super satisfying. That's so much fun.
That is awesome, dude. It's awesome.
Cool.
Well, Marcus, thank you so much for I mean, it's so much stuff. I mean, I was really looking forward to this because we've interacted so much, and like I've said with the previous episodes, my motivations are pretty selfish. Like, it's just I wanted to learn about you, and I know that other people are going to be very interested in how you got here and some of your insights into the world of flight sim air traffic controllers. So I really appreciate the look behind the scenes with Marcus.
Even if they don't, at least we got to spend a couple minutes chatting with each other. Miss you, buddy.
I know. I miss you too, Marcus. I miss you too.
We love you, Bill. We wouldn't be doing these if we didn't love you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, again, Marcus, thank you so much. We'll link all of your stuff in the description there.
Sweet.
So when you get around to flying some more, and hopefully if the scope streams come back in one way or another, people will be able to find you.
Yeah, we'll be doing a lot more flying in about a month or so. I've got 3 students that I'm just finishing up in the West, and then Perfect. We'll be able to do a lot more flying. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, look forward to that big time, man.
Yeah.
Cool, Marcus. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it, man.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for this special bonus. I have the sun is hitting just at the worst possible spot here. Thank you for sticking around for we're going to call this the post-credits angle of a talk bonus feature. And this segment is called Things Marcus Hasn't Tried Yet.
Let's go.
Things Marcus hasn't tried yet. Okay. The first, I have got 3 written down that I can recall.
Yeah.
The first one, I don't really blame you because you live in Omaha, you lived in Colorado, you lived in Salt Lake. You're Mr. Landlocked for the most part.
Yeah.
So you've never had clams.
Never had clams.
That's a little bit weird. But we'll give you a pass on the clams.
I'm looking forward to trying clams. So if I make it down to Orlando, I promise you that I will at least sample a clam.
Okay, so a little melted butter, dunk it in there.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
Go with the one that I'm most embarrassed about. Just go for it.
Item number 2 is frickin' cannoli.
Yeah, there it is.
You've never had a cannoli?
I've never. Okay, so I've had those frozen ones, right? But I know that those aren't cannolis.
Non-Jamaican.
I'm sorry, Bill.
That's all right.
Maria, if you're watching too, I'm sorry.
All right, so I mean that's not the worst thing because again, it's not like there's a huge Italian population in Omaha.
But still,
there's got to be like a good Italian restaurant somewhere close by. I mean, Yelp something. Get a babysitter. Take the wife out, and
get some cannoli.
Yeah, get a cannoli.
There's got to be a cannoli around here somewhere. We'll find some. Hey, if any of you Omaha guys in the description or in the comments.
Yeah, if you live in Omaha or are aware of the Omaha food scene, please leave a comment where to get the best cannoli in Omaha.
Marcus needs to get a cannoli.
Now, I don't know. I haven't gotten updated if you've checked this off the list yet, but at least for a long time, you've never had whiskey. Scotch.
I've never had single malt Scotch.
Scotch. Still haven't.
It's still there. And the thing is, again, I'm a cheap ass. So when you got to understand that the Nebraska mentality is the closest thing you're going to get to Scotch is Busch Light.
Oh my god.
Julia probably understands. There's just not many Scotch drinkers here, and so I need a Scotch drinking buddy, and that is really kind of where I'm at. I need a Scotch drinking buddy. So I've been told that Orlando again, when Orlando pops up for the for the expo, that's going to be taken care of, and I'm going to pay for it.
All right. So those are the three that I could remember. Is there anything else you'd like to admit to on the Angle of a Talk post-credit bonus feature?
Oh my goodness, there's probably a ton of them out there. To me, it's normal that I haven't tried these things because they aren't something that is just like a normal thing, you know. So I'm sure I probably could be embarrassed by a whole bunch of things. What else should I have tried that I probably haven't tried?
I mean, if you haven't had a cannoli, I mean, have you had like real lasagna?
I think I have. But I don't know, man. I've had what people have put in front of me and said, "Hey, that's lasagna," and I eat it and I love it. It's fantastic. Yeah, but I've had other things like when it's like silly foods, man. I've never had snails. I don't know that I really want to have snails.
No escargot.
But, yeah, right. That's just.
I never had that either. I don't think.
But I've had alligator tail.
You've had alligator tail, or you haven't?
Yeah, buddy, I have.
Ooh.
And it's super good. It tastes a lot like chicken.
Is it kind of chewy? Because I've had rattlesnake, and that's kind of chewy.
Yeah, it's chewy.
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain oysters.
I have not had bull testicles.
Dude, those are fantastic.
Interesting.
That's a great story too, if you don't mind me telling it.
We're in bonus time now. You can say whatever you want.
Here we go. So the story with the with the bull's testicles. I was in a I was in a band in college. And I was playing with a country band at this point. I am not a country fan. What did I play?
Yeah.
I was a drummer.
Okay, nice.
Now, as a country musician, now we played like 60s and 70s country. Now, it doesn't get any easier than that because it's just boom, 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 right? It's super, super simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I was playing with these old guys, and they were playing at an Elks Lodge up in South Dakota. And this like 90-year-old guy came up to me during a break. He came up with a Coors Light, and it looked like a chicken fritter. And he gives me the beer, and he says, "Sounding good, son. You want to put some lead in your pencil?" Like, excuse me? He goes, "Put some lead in your pencil. Just shut up and eat it." I'm like, okay. I ate it. Dude, they were freaking amazing. It was so good. And I was like, where can I get another one of those, whatever it was? He was laughing his ass off. I'm like, dude, I just want to go eat another one. He goes, "You know what that was?" He goes, "That was a Rocky Mountain oyster." And I'm like, damn it, those are good.
Are they freshwater or? I don't think you understand, son.
I don't think you get it, man. No, it's so good. They were so good.
Well,
and then I've probably had them a dozen times since, but I like them. They're good.
So you regularly eat bull balls, but you've never had actual oysters or clams.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Nebraska.
I love you, Marcus.
Oh, thanks, Bill.
All right, man. Peace out.